On this edition of the program, we're going to torture ourselves looking at the early vote, Kamala Harris's best chances, and a political road trip with Andrew Heaton. Bill Scher's there too. Obama really wants to run against Trump. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for October 25th, 2024. We're coming up on All Hallows Eve, guys. We are less than 2 weeks away from the election. It is crunch time. And we're getting early vote. We're going to go through those numbers in a second. Bill Scher is going to join us. Andrew Heaton is going to join us. It's a banger of an episode, friends. Also a $28 million bet on Polymarket. You heard me. $28 million. Before we do any of that, I do need to remind everybody that we are getting to the end of the comped period when Patreon supporters are going to have the RSS feeds that they are using to get all of our bonus content. Those aren't going to work no more unless you subscribe on Substack. So please, if you got an email to alert you to this podcast, go ahead and click on the post. There should be a little subscribe button there. You'll be able to move your payment information over. You're no longer going to be charged on Patreon. Substack is our new home. We're at about 61% conversion, which is great for like 2.5 weeks. But, I don't know. Nervous, right? Come on. I got a little baby, so it's I would love for it to be higher. Head on over there right now, politics.com. Help take care of that. I want to get that out at the top of the show just because I don't want anybody to miss any of the episodes that are going to come out when it is like an absolute must listen, which is going to be like on election day. So please, please. Okay. With that being said, let's torture ourselves with early vote numbers. I want to give a big shout out to Vote Hub. Vote Hub is a great resource, a great social media follow. One of the people that runs it is UMich Voter, like University of Michigan Voter. Great. Another great follow on Twitter. Great data visualization. Let's do some of the stuff that doesn't really matter. Just a sign of the times. Florida. Miami-Dade on early vote is red. On early vote. Not after Election Day. On early vote is red. If you are not from Florida, you have to understand the gravity of what that means. Because there is a conversation that happens when people talk about Florida. They're like, oh, well, the Cubans are Republican in Miami. Yeah, that's true. Some of the Cubans are Republican. The argument used to be, yeah, that was the old Cubans. The young Cubans are Democratic. That didn't stop Barack Obama from winning that county. Didn't stop Hillary Clinton from winning that county. And Joe Biden barely won that county. There's a very good chance that Donald Trump's going to win Miami-Dade outright. If the early vote is already red there, then that is in play. That would leave, of the big populous South Floridian counties, Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, Broward County. I'm from Broward County. Broward County is the most liberal. If Broward County ever goes red, that'll just be a wrap, right? Like, Florida will now be Alabama. But just rightful. We're going to call, in fact, that might be the first thing I say on election night. We're going to do a big election night stream. We're going to be up as late as anybody needs to. We're going to ride this thing out together. The first words out of my mouth might be, I'm calling Florida. I have become famous over the last few cycles for calling Florida earlier than anybody. I might call it the second that polls close. I'm going to be timing it like I'm a football coach waiting to get a timeout in. That's when I might call Florida. So, that being said, Florida doesn't really matter. Let's talk about the Sun Belt states, though. Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, all of them have more Republicans voting early, both in person and by mail, than Democrats. Flashing danger signs. Before we go any further, let me just say this one more time. Please, for the love of God, listen to what I am going to tell you. Don't take early voting seriously. What I am doing right now is sick stuff, dude. I am doing stuff you should not be telling your friends or family that you are listening to. This is illicit stuff. You would have a healthier life if you were outwardly talking to your coworkers about doing casual fentanyl than doing what I am doing with you right now, which is going through early vote returns. It is the fastest way to drive you insane. That being said, in our extra episode, our Substack exclusive episode on Thursday, we talked about what was happening in Nevada. I try not to get too invested in early vote numbers. A lot of things can happen. We do not know the story of this election, especially since we are coming off of unrealistic expectations for what the splits should be in terms of early vote between Republicans and Democrats. The pandemic happened in 2020. Obviously, you had Democrats took advantage of early vote a lot more than Republicans. Republicans were actively saying it was fraud. So unrealistic. That being said, I do believe in John Ralston. John Ralston is the Oracle of Nevada. Everybody is a coward when it comes to talking about the Silver State. Nobody actually gets chesty about an opinion until Ralston says something. Ralston is saying he has never seen Republican voter turnout like this, early Republican vote turnout like this ever, at least in the recent history of the state, since the beginning of the Reid machine, the Harry Reid turnout machine. Does that mean it will end like that? No, but I do want to go to his early voting blog. I'm going to read this directly from his early voting blog. I believe you should be reading it too if you are also a sick son of a bitch like I am. The volume of mail ballots is down, which is either a concern or an opportunity for Democrats. About 450,000 mail ballots were cast in Clark 4 years ago. Only about a third of that number has been counted so far, and the total could get to 500,000 this year, or not. Need to keep an eye on most of those numbers. The Democrats almost always do better in the second week as opposed to the first week of early voting, and they're going to need to do it this year. Not to build an insurmountable lead, as they have in the past, but just to stay in the game. I don't know of any smart Democrat who think that this is going to be anything other than a slog in a 50-50 race, possibly decided by a few thousand votes. What they don't say is this: that may be a best case scenario for them, just to keep it close. Something to keep an eye on. Arizona, voting more Republican. Georgia, voting more Republican. Looking like the Sun Belt is rosy numbers for Republicans. Again, here we go. Say it with me. Don't get too invested in early voting numbers. Are you ready? Let's go get more invested in early voting numbers, because there are positive signs for Democrats, and it's specifically in Pennsylvania. As I speak with you right now, it is 8:31 p.m. on Thursday evening Central Time. Democrats in Pennsylvania have turned in 726,619 votes. That is more than double what the Republicans have turned in, or about double what the Republicans have turned in. That is 360,527 votes. There are also 120,917 independent votes. you assume that the independents are going to break for Democrats. That is the assumption. Don't get too invested in the early vote. Right now, the biggest turnout is in Allegheny County. Allegheny County is Pittsburgh, not Philadelphia. My sense has always been that the collar areas of Pittsburgh are redder than Philadelphia, but Allegheny is still very blue. It appears as if Pennsylvania voters, Democrats, are getting out in a way that they are not in some of these other states. Don't get too invested. All of the other Great Lakes states, Michigan and Wisconsin, do not do party information on early vote. So we just know the counties that are being turned in, and even I am not sick enough to make you go through how many votes are coming in per what county. What does this say? Well, if we're going to be absolute lunatics, which we are, it seems to tell the story that was not unlike where we were with Joe Biden before he dropped out. That the Sun Belt is moving away from the Democrats. That's probably the price that they are paying for immigration. That the Rust Belt is something that they're going to need to hold on to. The question is Kamala Harris going to be as effective of a candidate in the Rust Belt as Joe Biden was? Because say what you will about the shambling corpse of our 46th president of the United States, but he's Scranton Joe. He had a connection to union voters. You had people who know statewide elections, like John Fetterman, saying, we're not going to win Pennsylvania if Joe Biden is not on the ticket. Good early voting numbers. They are not as good as they were in 20 for Democrats. But again, the question is, what is reasonable since you're not in a pandemic? And exactly how will this go as we move the rest of the time on the clock getting to election day? One more time out the door. Don't get too invested in early vote numbers. Fastest way to drive yourself insane. Sorry for being that guy. But we won't do this a lot. For the record, we won't do this a lot. Probably. I am fascinated by the Nevada thing, though. Fascinated by the Nevada thing. I've been reading John Ralston for a long time. I've never seen him this gobsmacked. When John Ralston is gobsmacked, color me interested. There is a good case for Kamala Harris. And somebody who has defended the Democratic ticket, except for when he wanted Joe Biden to drop out, is Bill Scher, Washington Monthly. He joins us right now. As we hurdle towards single digits left in terms of days of this election cycle, we bring back one of our good pals, Bill Scher, Washington Monthly. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I am a little tired, but I am living the dream. And, you know, we declared on this show a vibe emergency for Kamala Harris about a week ago. The vibes had been very good. And then you saw a little bit of shifting in poll aggregates, although that in and of itself is a controversial thing to say. Mm-hmm. I ask you, Mr. Bill Scher, how do you view this race as we are into the final furlough?
Well, I don't have any particularly spectacularly unique insights. On the whole, I take the polls at face value, which is that this is a coin flip race. Yeah. I think it is possible that the pollsters have overcorrected mistakes of the past and perhaps might be inflating the Trump number. Mm-hmm. But obviously we can't know until election day.
So that would be the argument that these polls are more like 2022 than they were like 2020 or 2016.
Well, you know, there's I mean, the 2022 polls, I think, were generally pretty accurate.
So you argue more aggressive for Trump or more aggressive for Republican voters than 2022.
Well, there's an argument that Nate Cohn has put forth, that Nate Cohn at the New York Times, that in order to try to avoid missing Trump voters, many pollsters have weighted their data based on past vote recall. Who did you vote for in 2020?
Recall response bias. Yes,
right.
That was a very interesting piece by him.
And so if you get a sample that's very heavy on people who say, I voted for Joe Biden, the pollster will say, well, I'm going to turn up the dial on the folks that said I voted for Trump, and therefore I'm getting presumably a more accurate reflection of the electorate, but that's presuming that your electorate is sort of frozen in time from 2020, and maybe it isn't. And this is something I've not heard a lot of pollsters say. This is me being an amateur and riffing. But it did used to be the case that pollsters did not generally weight on party affiliation, which is another data point that you can weight on. But a lot of the logic, pre-Trump was, well, people change. People might say they're a Democrat today and be a Republican, or be an independent and go Democratic, depend on what's going on in the world. So if you sort of force the dials to be at a specific ratio, you might miss a change in sentiment. But it seems like now more pollsters are using party affiliation as a weight. I believe even the New York Times is doing that. As a way to avoid missing, partially as a way to avoid missing Trump voters. And so if there is a break one way or the other, maybe we're missing that in the polls. So I don't want to go so far and say, like, I know this is happening, and so Kamala's definitely going to win. But it's one scenario that I have in the back of my mind.
I actually have a lot of questions about the recall response bias, because I think that the easiest way that you could say it is that, all right, well, the point of doing it, the reason why it is said to have been put into practice is so you can track down Trump voters. But at the same time, if what you are doing is giving more weight to people that said they voted for Trump in 2020, which is its own fraught thing, and everybody I've talked to that's smart about polling says that this is a very, very dangerous idea just in general for a lot of different reasons. But let's just say that this is accurate and everybody's going to tell the truth, then a few things would also happen. Not only would you identify Trump voters more, but you'd probably overweight possibly people who have defected from Trump over the last 4 years. And if those voters are overweighted, then you might be underweighting Democratic defections. And by all available metrics, it looks like we might have meaningful coalitional shifts in this election. So I don't know. Nobody I've talked to that I trust says that this is a good idea, the recall response bias. But I also don't know if it immediately would inflate Trump numbers, or because to me it could also hide numbers, or at least weight less numbers that would be less rosy for Kamala in her coalition, especially in states like Michigan.
Well, all these things might end up sort of negating each other, and all becomes a wash, and therefore maybe the polls are essentially accurate, and it's just really a close race. And that's sort of the way the Kamala Harris campaign is seeing it, at least what they say publicly. And that sort of gets me to where I still I still put the edge in the Harris camp.
Yeah.
Because I do feel that there is a ground game mismatch here. And
let's get to that. Yeah.
I can't remember if I talked about it on your show previously or not. It's been one of my hobby horses since June. Look, ground game in general tends to be overstated. There's academic research to say that it maybe moves a point at best. But
I mean, let's flash back to 4 years ago.
Well, right,
the Biden campaign was not knocking on doors, and people were pulling their hair out because of it, and they wind up winning the election.
Yes, although that was an unusual race because we had incredibly high turnout because of mass use of mail. And so if everyone's getting a ballot in their mailbox, you don't necessarily need to do a lot of get out the vote work because the job's been done for you. Voting's been made very easy. So that's not really now, and how much mail and early voting dominates this race still is a TBD. But we do have a lot of evidence that, just to say, to back up one more time, most cases, both campaigns do similar levels of quality in their ground game, making it kind of a wash.
Yeah.
But do you have a mismatch here?
Alexi, let's take one more step back. For folks who don't understand
sure.
what we talk about when we say ground game, what are we talking about when we say ground game?
I mean, you're talking, door knocking, phone banking. Obviously, phone banking is a lot harder these days. You're trying to identify who are the voters who are with you, and to make sure they show up on election day or pre-election day, and you're trying to identify the voters who are on the fence. And
Yes.
doing all you can to persuade them, and once you can identify them as a yes voter, in the parlance of GOTV land, they're called ones and twos. You rate voters on a 1 to 5 basis. If you have ones to twos, your job on election day or for the early voting to make sure that you've identified,
Cast their ballot, or they get to that ballot box.
Right.
That's it. Hell or high water.
And so, if you're really doing a perfect GOTV operation, you have poll watchers at the polling stations. You have your list of ones and twos. You check that midday. Oh, I have ones and twos who haven't voted yet. Let's make sure I call them or text them or knock on their doors. Or if you know there are people who need a ride because they're elderly or have a handicap, you make sure you have a plan to get them to the polls. I mean, that's what good GOTV does.
Yeah.
Now, are you familiar with Charlie Kirk?
Indeed, I am. The
Okay.
Turning Point Action scion who has become a divisive figure, obviously in his own right, but a very influential one in Republican politics, mostly known for his conferences and his collegiate activism.
Yes. Now, forgive me if I've told this story before on this show. I apologize to listeners.
I don't think I've heard your Charlie Kirk story.
Oh, you have? Okay. Oh, great. Because I wrote about this at the Washington Monthly back in June. So folks who might have seen articles about Republican GOTV, and I'm not saying I'm like the greatest shoe leather reporter in the universe, or I even did a lot of any shoe leather reporting, because I didn't. But I did identify this issue back in June. So Charlie Kirk's Turning Point, as you said, began as a college-based operation. Let's have chapters on college campuses and troll students and attack professors for being radicals. And they got a lot of money from right-wing donors doing this, and Charlie Kirk and his pals are probably doing very well for themselves, and they have grander ambitions. So in 2022, they start doing some get-out-the-vote stuff, particularly in Arizona, but they're not good at it, and all their candidates in Arizona lose.
Yes.
They're undeterred, and in 2023, Kirk starts talking about, we have a $108 million get-out-the-vote plan targeting Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin, and the RNC should work with us and give us lots of money to do this.
Yeah.
At this point, the RNC chair is Ronna McDaniel, and there are reports that she was going to Donald Trump and saying, you really should steer clear of this Charlie Kirk guy. He's saying lots of racist stuff on his podcast. He's saying he doesn't feel safe in a plane with a black pilot, and Martin Luther King shouldn't have a holiday. And I know you're trying to make inroads with black voters. He's not going to help you here. Charlie Kirk goes on his podcast saying the 22 midterms are all Ronna McDaniel's fault, and she should be ousted, and he should put his daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, in her place and let people like Charlie Kirk, handle the get-out-the-vote operations. Guess what happens?
Yeah.
They shiv Ronna McDaniel in February, and there are reports at the time of Republicans telling the media, this looks like a grift. Charlie Kirk's trying to steer business to this app that the people on Turning Point own. This is a bad idea. I mean, most people not on the record, but this is not me presuming it. These are Republicans telling reporters this at the time. But it happens anyway, and the Charlie Kirk get out the vote philosophy is, don't worry about these swing voters, these persuadables, these suburbanites. You need to get the hardcore MAGA people in the rural areas, the hunters and the evangelicals, but who
Turn
were
out
not
the base.
who are not reliable voters,
Yeah.
who are either unregistered or just don't vote consistently. Let's focus on them. So what was sort of slightly befuddling was Donald Trump may be a grifter, but he doesn't want to be grift Ed. Why would he steer GOTV work away from the people who are experienced in it to people who don't have experience in it? And what I can come down to is he likes the notion of just churning out MAGA voters and not worrying about swing voters. So that was no one's telling me he's got to modulate his rhetoric to run this race. So ever since then, you may have, if you follow this closely, there's been many reports for almost every mainstream media organization at this point, quoting other Republican officials, particularly those who operate in suburban areas, saying, I used to see a lot of canvassers around here, and now I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah.
This is really concerning to me. And that's because all the work that they're doing is mainly in the rural areas. And look, if you're door knocking, you tend not to door knock in rural areas because it's not efficient. People live far away from each other.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time to get from house to house. So it's just, in terms of efficiency, it doesn't add up. But that's where they've spent their energies. And why are you seeing Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney hitting all these suburban counties? Because they're trying to hit persuadable suburban voters, and they've had pre-Harris, back in the Biden days, they've been working on building up a turnout machine, which is the way it's normal. It's all needle in the haystack work. It's very hard to find persuadable voters. It just takes a lot of time, and
especially these days.
Right, exactly. I mean, people don't answer their phones, don't answer their doors. It's grueling work. A lot of it is spinning wheels, but that's why you got to put a lot of time and person power into it. So if this is a race that's coming down to a handful of votes in suburban counties in battleground states, I think the Harris campaign has built an operation designed to win that race, and the Trump campaign hasn't.
So this is a fascinating question, and I don't even know if we're really going to know the answer to it until after this election is over, because GOTV work is a lot of things from my perspective as an outside observer. One of them is there is no greater factory for complaints in the middle of a campaign than from GOTV organizations, because they get one chance every 4 years, really, maybe in Senate races, you have smaller versions of it, to activate what they have, which is a local understanding of an electorate to go out and find persuadable voters and get them out. It is something that you regularly see, and we even saw it on the Democratic side in Pennsylvania, a big article saying that the local Harris campaign is totally screwing up get out the vote and totally screwing up the ground game, and that they need to do X, Y, and Z. It is hard from our perspective as people on the outside of this to really have a sense of, okay, is that just a local organization that didn't get picked, that didn't get money, complaining that, oh, everything's going to be screwed up because they want the hammer to fall on the people that did get money if the very close state happens to be lost by whatever percentage point? Maybe. But that being said, the other factor here is something that is a larger question with campaigns in general, and that is, in our world of infinite super PACs that can raise however much money that they want, what should and what shouldn't you put outside of the purview of the campaign, or even to a certain extent the party, the national party? And that's where I think that there's a gigantic question. We saw it be an absolute disaster for Ron DeSantis to put a lot of his core campaign work in the hands of his super PAC. And
now we're seeing this with when Charlie Kirk first pushed this idea last year, he wasn't expecting Elon Musk to swoop in, but that is what has happened. Elon Musk created a super PAC, America PAC.
Yep.
He's now working with Charlie Kirk and Turning Point, particularly in Wisconsin. They've thrown a ton of money into GOTV, but they've also hired and fired a lot of vendors in a very short period of time, suggesting that they don't really know what they're doing. It's not just, I mean, obviously you want money to hire people and have materials. It can be costly, but it's not just a throw money at a problem thing. You have to know what you're doing.
And that's always been the, you know, the defenders of Turning Point Action say, yes, it's Charlie Kirk. Yes, everything that you've said about him is probably true. There are actual adults that are working under the hood of this thing that have done it before, and it's going to be more professional than you think. The detractors, as you've laid out the argument, are, yeah, but every time he's done it in the past, his candidates have lost. And also, the first time that I heard vociferous, venomous anger toward Turning Point Action's GOTV ideas, it was from the Ruthless podcast, which is a bunch of people who have been political operatives from Mitch McConnell's team and have been in Republican politics for 2 decades, screaming and yelling that Turning Point Action was out there continuing to slander early voting, which is, you know, something that they seemingly have gone away from at least now, but is, you know, was poison for Donald Trump in 2020. And it seems like at least the rhetoric has changed from that on the Republican side compared to 2020 this time. But still,
that's one of the big unknowns here. How the early vote goes is something that we're not going to know the full answer to. I think at least until after Election Day. Maybe there's some
nothing is more torturous. I've akin to betting it on preseason football. like you can torture yourself by looking at these early returns and see with the magic eye exactly whatever you want to see.
Well, you may be, and maybe your listeners are focusing on Nevada because John Ralston, who runs the media operation in Nevada Independent, has a famous early vote blog there. And, you know, it's a small enough state where it's kind of a little bit easier to get your arms around where the votes are coming in particular counties. And he's always been very accurate in taking the early vote data, close to election data, and being able to make accurate predictions from it. So I actually don't want to disparage his work in this regard. No. We have seen in Nevada in these early days, Republicans doing much better with early voting than we have in recent elections. And we know that Republican Party officials have generally been promoting early voting, even if Donald Trump has been contradictory in what he says about it publicly. Probably see more in-person early voting from Republicans than mail early voting because there's still a lot of conspiracy theories around mail. But I think these are the big things we don't know in general beyond just the early voting question. We don't know to what extent Republican early voting is cannibalizing Election Day vote or is augmenting Election Day vote.
Yeah.
In general, it's a good idea to do early voting because it's more at-bats. It's more days to get your people out.
And to your get out the vote thing.
Yes.
You can cross people off the list. If they say, yeah, I already early voted, congratulations. Now I'm not going to send you a text. I'm not going to knock on your door. I'm not going to bother you anymore. If I could turn off the television ads, I would. But please go on about your day. Or
you might even say, hey, I see that you voted on October 15th. Can you help us get out the vote on Election Day? You know, if you've done this job, here's the next job for you.
Who do you know that hasn't voted?
Correct. You know, so better to have more days if you use the time efficiently. If all you're doing is moving your vote from November 5th to October 20th, like, you haven't accomplished very much. So we don't know to what extent the time is being used well by Republicans. We also don't know the rates of crossover voting. We don't know how many Republicans vote for Harris, how many Democrats vote for Trump, and we don't know how independents are going to break. And if you look at the exit poll data, and exit polls are obviously, you know, not the greatest.
Flawed.
You know, they're flawed, of course, but I wouldn't cite them like in a precision way.
Yeah,
but we do see in exit poll data over the last several cycles pretty big swings amongst independents. I mean, there's some variation in crossover voting for Republicans and Democrats, but you can see pretty big, you know, independents going for one candidate and then another candidate, which tracks with different candidates and different parties winning elections.
Yes.
And it's not like, and if you look at polling data now, you look at the independent numbers, they're all over the map. So I can't even tell you with confidence I know which ways independents are going to break based on current polling. So those are just very big unknowns that the early voting data is not going to easily tell you. Whether it's even in Nevada, where you can take a lot of what John Ralston says to the bank, but that's one state, 6 electoral votes, probably not the tipping point state. Harder to know how this is all going to break in the states that really could be tipping points: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, maybe North Carolina. That's going to be harder to tease out in advance.
If Kamala Harris wins, what's the story?
If Kamala Harris wins, the story is on the Harris campaign side. Well, it also depends on the margin. If she wins by 5 points, I'm not going to credit ground game. But I think Harris has run a close to error-free campaign. I might say she biffed the View question about what are you going to do different than Joe Biden at first, and maybe she hasn't been clean about it even after that fact. That's like the worst thing I could say about her campaign. In the annals of campaign gaffes, that's pretty low on my list. It's no "you ain't black." It's no "basket of deplorables." It's not even clinging to guns and religion. Where it's like a multi-day story that engulfs a campaign. So I think she's run a pretty textbook campaign that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Versus a candidate like Donald Trump, who, even compared to 2016, I think is really spiraling out. I think in 2016, Donald Trump was, for Trump, kind of buttoned up, more focused. I mean, not that there weren't digressions, because there always are, but I think it was more issue focused in the last weeks of 2016 than he is today. And you have a campaign in the Harris campaign, which is more focused on the swing, focused on crossover Republicans, not overly kowtowing to the base. So there are things, there is obviously a big emphasis on abortion. There's a focus on trying to make sure that black men or Latino men aren't feeling they're being taken for granted. So in that, you can call that sort of base work if you like. But it really is, I think, an overall attempt to say there are people on the swing, people on the fence that we think we need to persuade, and we're not just going to gin up turnout with our tried and true. Whereas Trump is mainly focused on cranking out MAGA voters. Not a lot of rhetoric that's designed to appeal to the middle. There are exceptions. I'm not saying there aren't. I mean, again, going to a barbershop in the Bronx is a way to perhaps try to make inroads with new constituencies. Although maybe I would have picked the Bronx to do it. I might have picked a swing state to do it in. I might have done it in Milwaukee or Detroit.
Well, no, he went to a black barbershop in Atlanta, so there was that. Yeah.
I wouldn't have talked smack about Detroit in Detroit, but that if Kamala wins, that's what I think the story is, if I can say it in a more meandering, circuitous way.
That's very, very interesting, because I do think that would be the story. I also think that you could probably tell the exact same story if she loses as the reason why she lost. You could say that she was over-focused. She believed that Liz Cheney was a panacea for this election in a way that did not address crumbling issues in the Democratic constituency, and that she went so far into the center that she actively alienated portions of her base.
Well, I think I'm sure we would hear a lot of commentary from more left figures, arguments of that nature, but I don't think it would adequately depict the counter narrative. Because let's say, for example, she announced, "I'm for an arms embargo on Israel." Well, maybe that would bring you back some, younger left-wing voters and Arab voters in Michigan, but that doesn't tell you how many people you might alienate with that stance as well. You don't know what.
In general, I think the biggest thing that I would see that will be in the obituary for the Harris campaign, should it not succeed, is the question that does seem to be the Kobayashi Maru for them, which is, how are you going to be different than Joe Biden in a 60-30 wrong track, right track environment where the candidate that was running for re-election had to drop out because of problems with popularity to his administration? differentiating yourself would seem to be a key issue, and they haven't really been able to do that.
I want to address that, but just to precede, I think that if Trump wins, the bigger story beyond the handling of that particular question would be that he convinced a majority or plurality of voters that things were better on his watch. Yes. He successfully retconned his presidency, wiped clean all of 2020, took credit for an economy that was already in good shape and on the up from Barack Obama, and negated what had done before his watch, negated what happened before his time and after his time. To have people believe that I had more money in my pocket with Trump and I have less now. Yeah. It would be to an extent that you could blame Democrats for that. It's not just the Harris campaign in the last 2 months, but before then, failing to have a narrative that pointed out that Trump was handed a good economy and blew it with his own mishandling of the pandemic. That beyond just the economy, his entire presidency engulfed America in flames, literally, because his entire standard of operation is to pit Americans against each other. So when things like George Floyd happen, we turn on each other. Instead of trying to find a way, whether it's the pandemic or George Floyd or anything else, everything to Trump is a political war to be waged. And so we end up hating each other in the process instead of trying to find ways to unify each other and work together. I
wonder if voters just look at that as a two-way street, though. Obviously that is the Democratic perspective that Trump is the one who's doing it. And we can argue forever about who threw the first stone. But, it doesn't, at least I think for many voters, look like the Democrats are trying to hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
Oh, I think if Trump wins, it means that Democrats had a difficult time focusing on Trump's negatives because people tend to say, well, you all do that. Even though there's a rejoinder, well, we don't all have insurrections. We don't all literally attack cities that Americans live in. We don't all use profanity to describe our opponents when we're running for president. We don't routinely denigrate individual people as being the enemy from within. There are clearly degrees of order here, which I think Democrats have tried very hard to make those points. But what perhaps they haven't done as well as they could have is to say the things that you're willing to excuse Trump for on the basis of what is good for the economy. You're allowing him to take credit for things he doesn't deserve to be given credit for. He didn't walk into a mess. He walked into a growing economy. Yeah. And rode it for 3 years, and then because he didn't know the basics of public health management, torched it. And if you don't want to blame Donald Trump for that, even if you want to say, well, the pandemic's not his fault, fine. Yeah. Regardless, Joe Biden walked into a colossal mess, Trump's fault or not, where inflation was rampant worldwide. And while it took some time, we have wrestled that beast to the ground, and we're still working on it. We know things aren't perfect, but they're a hell of a lot better than they were 4 years ago or even 2 years ago. Which is the kind of thing that Ronald Reagan was able to do. Reagan had a recession in 1981, 82, very high unemployment, literally a recession. Inflation was still was much higher than it was today. And even 1984, inflation came way down by 84, but interest rates were much higher in 84 than they were today. But he was able to make the argument, we're on the right track. Things are getting better. We have done things to improve things. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris can say that, but that point has been kind of muddled. I think because one, Biden was a very poor communicator in the front half of the year, and so it was hardest to get that argument going.
He was a bad communicator in the first 2 years. If you look at when inflation was at its worst, we were hearing communication that this is transitory, that this is Putin's price hike, that this is instead of saying, look, like what you just said, there's a big beast. It's called inflation, but American resolve is going to wrestle it to the ground. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that we get this without going into a recession. And then by the end of it, we hit the soft landing. Aren't we great? As opposed to, don't worry, this is going to be over in 2 months as soon as that mean old Vladimir Putin stops poking around in Ukraine. That is I think that might be the seed that grew the tree, that grew the poison fruit.
I generally agree with that. So Harris, like many, which is not illogical, said, I can't make an economic lecture and convince people of something 2 months out.
Yeah.
When you're 2 months out, you got to be where voters are. You can't necessarily give them a whole swath of new information. They think prices are high, then prices are high.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to talk about my anti-price gouging plan to say how I'm going to make prices lower. So I get that. But I do think when you are effectively the incumbent, there has to be there should be part of the message that says, we did things that improve things. You have reason to believe we know what we're doing because we did X and Y occurred and Y was good.
Yeah.
I think there's if I was to quibble about the Harris campaign, I think that would be my quibble. I think it's true about the economy and also true about the border because I think the Harris campaign's been very good at pinning the failure of the border bill on Trump and blurring the fault of that issue to some degree.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think it's just a losing issue for them. So the best thing that they can do is try to foul tip it. And
look, they could have made
enough of a fig leaf.
They could have made a decision. This is a loser issue for us. Let's never talk about it. Let's just not even get into it and just redirect every time. But from the very beginning of that campaign in July, it was lean right in. We're going to run ads about the border. We're going to say that we want to fix this, and Donald Trump is not letting us fix it, which is a gutsy call. That was like a real kind of, there's no perfect data to make you make that call. That was a gut call. You can criticize it, but that was a choice.
Well, also, I do think that I don't know if you can really run away from something that is in some polls the number 2 issue in swing states or the number 1 issue in a state like Arizona.
You could have concluded it's the number 2 issue because diehard Republicans make it the number 2 issue. It's not necessarily a swing voter issue. We can win the swing vote on other things. So let's not.
Yeah.
I mean, Donald Trump should not be talking about abortion as much as he talks about it. He should talk about other things. He's went out of his way to talk about it when he didn't have to, now he's been tied up in knots about it, which I don't think has been helpful to him. But I do think Kamala Harris could be saying, "Hey, look, we just implemented an executive order that has dramatically reduced border crossings. If you want to say Joe Biden should have done it sooner, fine, but we did it, and it's working, and we want to build on this success." So I don't think she hits that part hard because she doesn't want to get into the whole question of why did you do it sooner. So I get why she's not doing it, but I do think as a general matter, incumbents have to show what you did to improve things. So whatever is remaining to do that people are still mad about, you can say we have some credibility that we know what we're doing here.
All right. I have one more question, and then I'm going to ask you our 4 scenarios where you think that this is going to end, most likely. One last question. You were somebody who professionally came of age in politics through the Obama and proceeding to that Bush administration. I was in college during that time. It gives me vertigo to see the Democratic nominee for president talk about the lifelong achievements of Dick Cheney. It makes me feel like I have fallen into a
Did she literally say lifelong achievements?
The record of leadership was what she said.
That's a little different. It's a little different.
It's further than I would ever imagine a Democratic nominee ever saying, considering where Dick Cheney was. I mean, even in our public lexicon amongst mainstream Democrats, when an Oscar-nominated movie about him being the worst person in the world came out only 6 years ago. What is your reaction to the hugging of the Cheney the Cheney family, obviously through Liz, but also including Dick?
Well, I've been making the point, and look, when I was blogging in the Bush days and the Obama days, I wasn't in the bipartisan space. I moved there. I I do think that bipartisanship is a winning message. I think that a lot of people in the middle do crave it. Even if they don't necessarily love every bipartisan compromise that comes out of Congress, they often might hate them. But I think they like it in the abstract. I think it was a successful message for Joe Biden. I think there's a track record of bipartisan success 2.2, which if they didn't have, I don't think Democrats would have had a relatively good midterm or have any prayer of winning this election today. And Donald Trump's record on bipartisanship is terrible. If Donald Trump...
But Cheney... yes, I agree. Everything. Bipartisanship, sure. Yes, you want to show that you can reach across the aisle. My question is whether or not the Cheney family is an effective avatar for that.
I mean, we'll only know after the votes are tallied in, but because it is so dramatic, because it is so head-snapping, neck-snapping.
Yes.
And it emphasizes the point that they very much want to have be front and center in this campaign, which is whatever your difference is, let's not steal elections. Let's not have insurrections. There are some red lines here as a country that we should not cross. And even people as so wildly ideologically disparate as Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney can see that. And they've been able, I think, to execute.
Are they ideologically disparate?
I don't think Kamala Harris was. I mean, I still assume that, I mean, even despite, Cheney's comments yesterday, Cheney is still pro-life.
That Dobbs went too far?
Well, she didn't say Dobbs went too far. She's saying the way state legislators are implemented have gone too far. Which, even Donald Trump suggests that sometimes. I mean,
trigger laws are not popular. All right, well, here, let me, you have a writing deadline, so let me get you to our scenarios. We have our 4 scenarios, as we do every election, as to how I believe this will end. The rosiest on the red side is Pax MAGA. This is the red wave of all red waves. Not only does Donald Trump win maybe a narrow victory in the popular vote, the first Republican to do that since George W. Bush in 2004, since the aughts are really back. They win the Senate and maybe more seats than you were thinking. Not only John Tester and West Virginia, not only John Tester go down, and West Virginia obviously gives the Republicans the Senate, but Senator Mike Rogers, maybe even, dare I say it, Senator Kerry Lake. That's the rosiest side, Pax MAGA. On the coin flip Republican side, we have Democratic Civil War, and this is a narrow Trump win in the Electoral College. Pick one or two of the contested races in the Rust Belt. So maybe a Michigan, maybe Hovde in Wisconsin, but none of the ones that are polling outside of the margin of error in the Sun Belt go to the Republicans. And then you have a Democratic House. So this is maximizing for violence within the Democratic coalition, because the argument will be the issues are strong. It was the leadership that's weak. And now you're going to fight for the next 4 years over what that leadership's going to be. Crossing the meridian line into good Democratic outcomes. Narrow Kamala victory. The map prevents the Senate from the Dems from keeping the Senate, but they win the House. That is unburdened by what has been Kamala's hailed as a conquering hero for doing the hot swap with Biden in the middle of the summer. The campaign has vanquished MAGA once and for all. And then there is Rose sends her regards. This is blue skies for the blue team. Not only do you have Kamala Harris sweeping the swing states, not only do you have a Democratic House of Representatives and Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, but Senator Colin Allred. You have a clean sweep of all of these swing states, and the Democrats do the impossible and keep the Senate, all 3 chambers, in the hands of the Democratic Party. Mr. Bill Scher, what do you believe is the most likely of those 4?
What I think is most likely, and this is it's not my firm prediction, it's not written in blood, it's only October 22nd, there's time for me to change my mind between now and Election Day. I would think the most likely is a 270, 268 Harris win in the Electoral College.
Narrow. Very close.
That's blue wall plus Nebraska 2, not winning anything in the Sun Belt. Democrats win the House, Republicans win the Senate.
So that would be unburdened by what has been. But that is, I think I'm kind of on the Carville side of this argument, that I don't know if the Sun Belt and the Rust Belt are going to split. Like I think that if
they
things are
totally
move,
might not. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's a given. I mean,
I know.
You
Yeah.
can see weird configurations where maybe both candidates break into the other part, and it's a mishmash. When everything's within the margin of error, I don't think it's if Pennsylvania does this, then all the blue wall is going to go here, or if North Carolina does this, then all of a sudden it's going to go here. I do not assume that is going to be the case. I'm just saying, looking at the polls as they are, and looking at where hopes have been dashed in the past.
Yep.
I'm inclined to believe Harris can gut out the Rust Belt with ground game, but will come up short, in the Sun Belt, where Joe Biden just barely won it, in Arizona and Georgia last time. But I would not be surprised to see different outcomes. You're asking me most likely. I think it's most likely,
Yep.
and I think that in the Senate, Tester does not look good in Montana. I hate to say it, but it seems like just a lot of Republicans have moved into that state, just changed the complexion of the state. And while Allred and Rascal Powell are knocking on the door in Florida and Texas, it seems hard to believe they could actually overcome without there being a really broader blue wave. Now, if there is a broader blue wave, then maybe they can. But I'm not seeing that, so I'm not going to just wish cast it. So that's why I think that is looking like a Republican pickup narrowly. And the House is a little more of a black box to me, but just from generic ballot testing and where these races are taking place in roughly bluer areas, I think Democrats can eke out a win there.
Have you ever seen an election where you followed polling where the popular vote numbers have flipped so wildly? I feel like I look at the same polls and I'll see a D+5 go to an R+2 overnight. Gallup had a thing that said that this was the best environment for Republicans since 2004, R+3, and the next time that they came out with a survey, it was D+5. This is insane. And everybody, I talked to somebody that's been looking at Trump internals, and they're saying it's the same thing. This is just like a wild compass that flies all over the map as to exactly what this environment's going to be.
I haven't gone back and looked recently, but I remember checking this several months ago that there were early in this race when it was still Joe Biden, you had the most lead changes in the national polling averages than you had in any other race prior. Typically, these things aren't up and down. They tend to be pretty boring.
In fact, that's part of the reason why you're able to poll is you have a general sense that this is a D+2, this is an R+1, whatever it is. You have a sense of what the environment is that allows you to accurately weight your polling data.
Right. So I think we, on one hand, it's a very polarized electorate. On the other, it might actually still have a lot of fluidity in it, and fluidity in both where swing voters are and fluidity in who shows up. We're coming off of an election that was almost all male and all early, which is not going to be the case now. So there's just a lot of things happening.
MAIL, not MALE, which is another big question in this election, is the gender gap.
Well, yes, and I have something the Washington Monthly called the Gender Gap Tracker, where every week I do an average on where men and women are coming down, and the numbers that I have, and I can't do it in every poll because not every poll releases publicly available gender data, but what I've seen doesn't quite track what the media narratives have been. The media narratives have tend to emphasize very widest ever. And it could be the widest ever because, again, I can find individual polls that say that, but I see other polls actually have an extremely narrow gender gap. And when you average it out, it looks very similar to what we've seen in the races that the Democrats have won, Biden 20 and Obama 12, and less like Clinton 16, where she really dipped with men. We've talked a lot about Clinton losing with white women, and that really isn't true. She lost with white non-college women, but she gained with white college women. They basically offset. It's the men where she really dipped relative to Obama before. And Harris, I'm seeing performing, not exactly where Biden and Obama were, but much closer to that than where Clinton is. But again, it's all polls, and polls could be wrong, or just and then we're talking about a difference between 4 or 5 points. So it's all margin of error stuff. So I'm seeing a gender gap that's tilted in favor of Harris because she's holding her own with men, as opposed to her being supercharged with women.
Well, we will have to wait and see. Mr. Bill Scher, Washington Monthly. Go find him on Substack. We love Substack now because we moved the show to Substack. So make sure.
But there's a Washington Monthly Substack.
Yes, exactly. A Washington
I
Monthly
have my own
Substack
Substack that I update. But you have the monthly newsletter there, which I write, and I'll be checking out your Substack as well.
Yeah, well, make sure. Yeah, no, you're one of our recommendeds. We had to make sure that we had all the people that are regulars on the show that get recommended whenever you subscribe to the brand new Politics.
I appreciate the honor.
Absolutely. All right, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I hear the other thing I hear. Some folks will be like, "Well, Donald Trump sent me a check during the pandemic." No. Y'all know, because I've heard this. I know y'all, some of you heard that. Hey, let me make sure y'all understand this. Joe Biden sent you a check during the pandemic, just like I gave people relief during the Great Recession. The thing is, we didn't put our name on it, because it wasn't about feeding our egos. It wasn't about advancing our politics. It was about helping people. That's the difference. Don't be giving them credit for that.
That is Barack Obama in Georgia, and this is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you go to support the show. That's where you get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. And guys, these are the most valuable bonus episodes that we do in our 4-year lunar calendar, because this is when news is happening. This is when the early vote stuff is happening. This is when the October surprises happen. This is it. If you care about this election, you need to go down to TakePoliticsSeriously.com. You need to sign up. $12 a month, or for the only time we've ever done this, we've never done annual stuff before because of the way we ran stuff on Patreon. Now that we are on Substack, we have the ability to do annual, and you guys have taken advantage of it. It is going to be available until Halloween. $99 for the whole year. 150 episodes of PX3 for less than $100. It is a pretty sweet deal. I would encourage you guys to go and check it out. But first, let's talk about what we heard up at the top. That is Barack Obama, his first campaign event with Kamala Harris in Georgia. I've been watching Obama's stump speeches recently. Let me just say this. Obama wants to run against Trump so bad. Gosh, does he wants to run against Trump. He believes he would wax Trump. He believes he would absolutely destroy Trump. And I think Trump thinks he would destroy him. It's also part of a star-studded run for the Harris campaign. They're coming down here to Texas, coming to Houston, going to do an event with Beyonce, highlighting some of the Texas trigger law stories, and also bigging up Colin Allred. There's some now new spending that's coming into the state for Colin Allred, because they believe that this is a chance for them to expand the map and actually play a little bit of offense. The Georgia event not only featured Obama, but also Bruce Springsteen, Tyler Perry, and Samuel L. Jackson. The hit parade's going to keep coming. If there's one thing that Democrats know how to do, is that as the calendar closes on the campaign, they will put some A-listers up on stage. And that is absolutely going to happen. Meanwhile, this weekend we are going to get the big Donald Trump rally in Madison Square Garden. Also rumors today that Trump might be looking to do events in New Mexico. New Mexico? Wisconsin's getting pretty lonely for the Republicans, by the way. There's going to be some second guessing. There's going to be some second guessing that Trump doing these outside of the map things. I'm telling you, this Trump campaign is either going to come out smelling like roses, that they played this election like a fiddle, that they ran one of the best campaigns that I have seen, because not many campaigns have an opportunity to beat two candidates, or there's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of questions. Why were you running more ads about transgender sex change surgeries in prison than the economy? Why were you going to New York City and California and New Mexico instead of Wisconsin and Michigan? A lot of questions. A lot of questions. And some of those questions are going to be asked by one specific Frenchman. We don't know who the Frenchman is, but this is a crazy story reported by Colin Rugg on Twitter. This is where I saw it, but you can verify it yourself. The crypto gambling site, Polymarket, which allows people to bet on the outcome of the race, received 2 bets from one trader who's apparently in France. $28 million on Donald Trump to win the Electoral College. You heard me. You heard me. $28 million for Donald Trump to win. But that's not even the nuttiest one. What? Something nuttier than $28 million? Yeah. $7 million on Trump to win the popular vote. On Trump to win the popular vote. Now, look, it's not like there's no evidence to point to this. Wall Street Journal, pretty straight ahead poll, has Donald Trump up 3 nationally in their latest poll. That is outside the margin of error of 2.5. So it's not crazy, but it's also loony, right? That is nuts. $7 million. We're talking whales, baby. We're talking whales. And finally, attorneys for President Donald John Trump have filed a motion to dismiss his federal election subversion case, arguing that the special counsel Jack Smith was unconstitutionally appointed. The motion, presented to U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkin, echoes arguments Trump made in Florida, where a judge threw out his documents indictment, an outlier decision compared to other courts who have upheld special counsel appointments. Trump contends that Smith was not confirmed by the Senate, rendering his appointment and actions invalid. Smith is set to respond by October 31st, though his team has previously dismissed these claims. Trump faces 4 felony counts related to alleged efforts to subvert the 2020 election, to which he has pled not guilty. Trump also saying in interviews that one of the first things he'll do as president is to dismiss Jack Smith himself. Say, so long and thanks for all the fish. Good luck. Good luck on your future endeavors. That is your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go. I got to tell you, Substack, what an amazing place. We are having a great time on Substack. The chat, guys, the chat. I didn't know how much to play up the chat when we first came to Substack, because I didn't realize that it was going to be as good as it is, but it's really good. You're able to just set up these little threads, and it's been a great hub for us to, for all of the audience that's on Substack, on the app. The app's really good to just throw in commercials that we're seeing. I think I'm gonna start another thread this Saturday for college football of just what ads are you seeing, especially for the World Series as well. So just download the app, at least subscribe for free to the newsletter, and yeah, just get on board. I've been writing more. I wrote a thing on Monday about how, speaking of college football, College Game Day explains the modern American male voter. God, gambling, podcasts, Tony Hinchcliffe, guy stuff. And if the Democrats barely lose this election and the gender gap is pretty wide, you're going to have some questions as to whether or not there is a Democrat that could theoretically go on college game day. Not to say that that's a panacea, but that's the kind of vibe that is being consumed right now by specifically young men. All right. Now, let's get to our friend, Andrew Heaton. Joining me from a field in Virginia, I think, is
from
the one and only
farm.
Andrew Heaton.
An alpaca farm in Virginia.
An alpaca farm in Virginia. Only the curious eccentric known as the political orphanage's own, the headmaster, Andrew Heaton, would be able to bring us such frivolity with only days away from the presidential election. You've been on a bit of a journey. You're moving from our environs here in Austin, Texas, out to the belly of the beast, D.C. But that means that you get to do something that I get a lot of emails about and people will write in, and that is just road enthusiasm. That is billboards, signs. You've been on the road now for several days, and I figured this is a rare opportunity, especially in a state like Virginia, which is like swing state adjacent. It is a swing state if everything goes wrong for the Democrats. What have you seen on your journeys, my friend?
I have been keeping my eyes peeled for exactly this. As your dutiful sign correspondent en route from Texas to our nation's capital, and I started paying attention in Oklahoma because I was visiting my parents. So I've gone through Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, and now Virginia. And the really weird thing, Justin, is I have not actually seen that many campaign signs, which I would have anticipated. You would think that it would be a bunch of campaign signs. I have seen more Trump signs than I have seen Kamala Harris signs, but not by a lot. By my count, I have seen 0 Kamala Harris signs throughout this journey. Once in Oklahoma, but I've only seen maybe 2 non-commercial Donald Trump signs the entire time that I've been driving, which is odd. You'd think I've seen bumper stickers, but in terms of just straight up Trump is going to do it kind of stuff, 2 or 3 of those. I've seen multiple signs for things that are selling stuff involving Donald Trump. I saw a truly disturbing "Make Skincare Great Again" sign in Tennessee, maybe halfway between Nashville and Memphis, that had the face of Hillary Clinton and the hair of Donald Trump. And I was honestly so confused by it. It's the closest I've come to coming into a wreck this entire trip, because I was trying to read the type. I was like, so the goal is to make skin great again, and if you go to our clinic, you will look like Hillary Clinton, who we all know to be the avatar of great skin.
Skin icon,
right? Skin
Hillary
icon.
Clinton.
No pores visible on that splendid model of a woman. So I saw one of those leaving Oklahoma City. I saw it was the iconic, Trump fight image. So that was up there.
Okay.
But then the second half of the billboard was like, Edmund RVs supports our president. Shop local, don't go corporate. RV.com. It was something like that. I don't remember the specific business, but it was kind of, because it's like, I know Oklahoma pretty well. It's going to go for Trump really hard.
Yes.
It's going to go for Trump. So that was clearly a commercial statement of like, hey, like we also like Trump. Come buy an RV from us. And then something about like, don't buy corporate from RV World up the street. So there were a couple billboards like that. There were 1 or 2 that were just, yay Trump. The most billboards I saw, however, Justin, by far, the most billboards were religious billboards of a variety of content that I saw. One of them was just straight up spare the rod, spoil the child. Like just it was a billboard just telling you to beat your children.
Hit your kids more. Hit your kids more.
Hit your kids more. And they
have you considered hitting your kids more?
And they got some kind of deal on it so that the top half was spare the rod, spoil the child, and then the bottom half presumably the same group was like 53800 Jesus or something like that. I don't remember. There were a lot of those 53800 Jesus ones. There was one when I drove through Memphis.
53800 Jesus. Wait, hold on. We got to get to the bottom of
no, it's okay. Wait, hold on. I saw enough of these. It's like 534 truth. That's it. 534 truth. 53 FOR truth. If you Google it, maybe it'll pop up because I don't know. There's a lot of those. And one of them, I saw this in Memphis specifically, was God has revealed in a vision to Ellen White, maybe? I'm straining to recall the name. God has revealed to Ellen in a vision that Memphis will be destroyed by a meteor. That was up there.
Okay, wait. All right, so this is 83 for truth.
That's it. 83 for truth. That's it. There's a lot of 83 for truth.
This is gospelbillboards.com.
Mm-hmm. There were a lot of those.
Let's go to
way
the
more of
About
those
Us.
than Trump billboards or Kamala Harris billboards.
Gospel Billboards began in 2006 with a vision of pointing America to Christ. The program is operated by the Christian Aid Ministries and funded solely by donations from our sponsor. Gospel Billboards post various gospel messages along interstates, major highways, and several shopping malls across the United States. Our goal is to point people to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We believe God in no respect of persons, and whoever people believe in Jesus and repents from their sins can have eternal life. That is, of course, John 3:16. And also, hit your kid.
Hit your kid. Yeah.
Maybe hit your kid. Have you thought about this kid? He's been running roughshod over you. No one's asking you to really give him a wallop. Just a quick rabbit punch into the liver. And that show him who's boss.
Could have been a different group. I don't want to get in trouble with 834
Christian Ministries.
Truth. That might be a different group. I would not be at all surprised if there were multiple. I mean, again, somebody took out a billboard to advertise that somebody was given a prophetic dream that Memphis will be destroyed by a meteor. That was something that, and I was like, what? Like, I still don't know what the purpose of that was. Is like everyone in Memphis should get out, or like the end times are coming. If that's the case, I don't need to know about the meteor hitting Memphis. Like I just, the end times will presumably hit me on the East Coast. So the weird thing, Justin, is from all of this, I just didn't see a lot of billboards or a lot of yard signs. Now, granted, I was on the highway; I wasn't driving through individual neighborhoods very much. I did see a Trump sign in my parents' neighborhood as I was driving out of it, but even then, kind of surprising in Oklahoma that I only saw one of those. So I take from this that people are just not that enthusiastic compared to like 2016 or 2020.
I've gotten a fair amount of emails from people in red areas that have said that they've seen less Trump signs than they did in 2016 and they did in 2020. Mm-hmm. Part of me believes that that's understandable. The guy's run 3 times. At a certain point, there's diminishing returns. The third sequel of a movie franchise very rarely is the highest grossing of all of them. And also, you had 2016, which was just a free-for-all where all of a sudden you had a cohort of the electorate that was allowed to have a candidate that they were really, really, really jazzed for as opposed to somebody that they were holding their nose for. So you can understand that there's a lot of enthusiasm. 2020 was a cultural war, right, with like the outside people and the inside people, and so outward displays of enthusiasm were something that you could understand. But I wonder if this one's like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm gonna vote for him, but I don't need to rearrange a bunch of jack-o'-lanterns into the word Trump.
Yeah, I share your thoughts on that. I think at the very least, something that both candidates are dealing with is, right, but what did you do? Both of them are dealing with that, right? So, Trump is coming in saying, let me back into the White House. We're on the wrong track. I will fix everything. And you can ask Trump supporters, well, like, what is he going to do differently that is good, that was different than what he did the first time? Like, what is he going to be able to pull off now that he couldn't? If he's taking pot shots at the Department of Education, why didn't he just get rid of it the first time? What's going to change? And then ditto with Kamala. I mean, Kamala's in the administration at the moment. She is the vice president. The funny
what?
thing, but I know.
On day one, she's going to do so much.
She's going to do so much. The bit that I'm kind of surprised that nobody ever says, like I watched the Brett Baer interview with Kamala Harris on Fox a couple of days ago, and he asked her that question, why haven't you already done this as the vice president? Why does no one ever say, because I have no power as the vice president? I wake up every day, there's a special phone, I pick it up, and before I've even opened my eyes, I go, is he dead? And the Secret Service says, no, madam, he's alive. Pence did the exact same thing. He'd wake up every day at 4:30, read the Bible, then he'd pick up the phone and go, is he dead? And they'd go, no, Mr. Vice President. The vice president can't do anything. He or she gets a tie-breaking vote when the Senate is deadlocked. They have no other power. So I don't know why we even go through this kabuki theater. Why haven't you as vice president done anything? Because you can't.
Well, but this is a weirder version of it, though, right? Because normally we get these things when, after a successful 2-year or 2-term presidency, the vice president of that successful president is now running, right? Now, that hasn't happened the last time that we had two-term presidents, which says something. But, when George H.W. Bush ran, that's like, oh, okay, well, what did you do? What would you do different? Blah, blah, blah. Like, these are standard questions that you ask a vice president. Normally, the president didn't drop out of the race like 2 months ago. And therefore, the question of like, okay, well, if you want to do all these things, like, do you have more power now? Do you not have more power? Like, let me ask you this question. Just generally, we have no inside sauce, but like, do you think Kamala is more powerful as a governmental figure than she was before she became the candidate?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think at the very
so
least,
if that's the case, then it's a fair question, right?
Yeah, true. No, good point. Because as you point out on your program, power is what all power is future power.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. So she's a potential president. Therefore, the potentiality is there. I also suspect that. Biden's inner team has delegated a lot of his portfolio to other people, and he is kind of coming in like an 18th century monarch, where they have it all arranged out for him, and they go, "How are you feeling? You feeling good? Great. Come on in. This is the portfolio. Make your decision based on these 4 options that we've done." And so, presumably, she would be one of those people. But then again, she's probably spending all of her time campaigning, so maybe she's not actually very involved. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing that she would actually have power on is if she just declared on the campaign trail, hey, I'm for X. That's something that Joe Biden has not said. You would see a groundswelling of Democratic figures, up to and including possibly Joe Biden, say, yep, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to put forth X, Y, or Z. Now, the likelihood of anything getting passed or anything being decided is up for grabs. And then also, it's in Kamala Harris's interest not to do anything, right? Because she wants to do the things when she's president. Like, no, you get all of my awesome leadership only when you cast your ballot, dear voter.
Brand new leadership too. I watched that same interview, as I said, with Brett Baer and
what'd you think of that one? Do you think that Brett Baer was mean?
I did think he was mean. As somebody that worked at Fox Business for a bit, like Brett Baer is one of 3 people that every other outlet will usually excuse, where they'll say, now we're about to say these awful things about Fox. We're not talking about Brett Baer. We're not talking back in the day about David Wallace.
Chris Wallace.
We're not talking about Chris Wallace.
Yeah.
We're not talking about these other 2 people. He came in real fighty, which I was surprised by. Like, I kind of get it in that when you interview politicians, particularly ones that are running for office, if you don't jump on them, they just turn the whole thing into a campaign speech. And they will run roughshod on you, and they will immediately go off the reservation from what you were talking about. So you do have to redirect them and go, I'm going to interrupt you. Listen, the question was X. But he didn't even really give her the opportunity to do that. I mean, he interrupted her 20 seconds into the conversation. So I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, because I don't think that's his personality.
Apparently she showed up like 10. So they had 45 minutes to conduct a 30-minute interview, and it was going to be turned around like as live. Mm-hmm. So she showed up late. And then before the 30 minutes that they had agreed to were up, and you can see it in the interview, you can see Brett Baer looking off to the side, which is Kamala's aides saying like, wrap. This is it. Last question. So I think that there was a tense atmosphere of you need to get in and out. It did not seem like Kamala came in and tried to like big dog the situation of like, oh yeah, come on, I'll give you an extra 10 minutes. Like I'm willing to take any and all questions. She was on her talking points, and I think Brett Baer felt the weight of might be the only adversarial interview that she gets this entire cycle. So if anyone's gonna ask her these questions, it's me right now. Because other than that, it might be another turn on the Call Her Daddy podcast.
You know what? I stand down. I watched that and I was like, man, he's being real jumpy and interrupting and mean this time around. But you're right. That is probably the only adversarial interview she did this entire election cycle. I mean, she has not gotten the question, when did you know that Joe Biden wasn't the Joe Biden that started the term? Like, that was the only time that anyone's ever asked her that. And I do think that baseline independent voters, and probably some Democrats, like, do want to know an honest answer. Like, was there a moment that you sat down at lunch and he ordered the salmon twice and you're like, whoa, what's going on here? Or the whole quantum candidate thing of, you were for mandatory gun buybacks for assault weapons, wanted to ban fracking. Like, there's this litany of things you wanted in 2019. Like, what changed? And the consistent answer is nothing changed. I have the exact same values. I have expanded my policy options. I don't know how to be any more clear about this, which is weird because we weren't clear at all. I'm being very clear with you right now. I'm sorry to swear. Goddamn politicians, Justin. They're all goddamn lizard people. And they all have these phrases of like, well, let's be clear. I'm going to be frank. Anybody that says frankly 20 times in a conversation should just never speak again. If you use the word frankly more than once a year, you're a lying sack of shit. Sorry. Frankly is something that you say. Like, if you're like, you know what? Frankly, I don't care that you're bleeding, Justin. That's how you use frankly.
Yeah.
You use frankly when you're saying, I willfully do not care about this faux pas that I've done. But they use it like I'm a direct, frank person. It's horrible. So, yes, in her case, I don't know how to be any clearer about this. And it's like, well, you weren't clear in the first place. And then it's this quantum phenomenon of, well, I'm both. And an acceptable answer, I am not a J.D. Vance fan. However, people will go, so your running mate, you compared to Hitler. You called him Hitler, and you said he was an idiot. Like, what happened there? And he goes, I was misled, and I changed my mind. And here's why I changed my mind. And I go,
yes.
Okay, well, I have no means by which to peer into his heart and determine whether it was opportunistic or legitimate or some combination of both, but it's a good answer. An answer that I would actually respect with Kamala would be, my bearings are over here, but I am representing the entire country, and I need to take into account what the majority of the country wants and what is politically feasible, and these are the things that I think we can get done, and I think that the majority of Americans want, and I want to assure you that I'm actually going to stand by that, and I believe there's a mandate, and I have reoriented my position in order to better reflect the people that I'm representing. I think that would be okay. I'd be all right with that.
Also, it blows my mind that there hasn't just been any kind of work to do a very standard politician story for Kamala Harris on some of these, where it's like, oh, well, you were for banning fracking outright because you believed it was an existential crisis and the world was warming at an unsustainable rate and we were all going to die. And now you're for fracking. Why? It's like, well, I'm glad you asked that, which is the other. That's how you knew that politicians are trying to think of exactly what they're going to say because they use that line. Then it's, when I was in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, I met a young fracking well who was on food stamps. And they really changed. They said, Madam Vice President, please don't ban me. And I said, thank you. And so now we have fracking again. I don't know, just some version of there was an evolution of thought and now I'm here.
Which I think is fine, by the way. There seems to be this. if this goes back to if this has always been there, or whether everybody got terrified of being a flip-flopper. He flip-flops. But like it's fine. If you've not changed any of your opinions in 30 years, you're probably insane. Like you're getting new data all the time. I've been wrong about stuff, and I find it very powerful. Like when I hear people that are in high positions, or even like in the think tank world, when people go, yeah, you know what? It turns out I was dead wrong on that, and it took me a long time, but I looked at the evidence, and I talked to some people I really respected, and I thought about it, and I changed my position, and now I'm telling you. Like, when people do that, I'm like, oh, they had enough presence of mind to admit that they were wrong and alter their position. I think that's okay.
I don't think that it costs a lot, to be totally honest with you. I think that you are able to do it. The bigger question is whether or not you are offending somebody on the other side. And that's why I think that Kamala has tried to walk that fine line, because she doesn't want to say to the leftist flank, hate me so much that you won't vote for me. She wants to say to them, hold your nose. So I'm going to be for this thing, but like, we all know why.
Right.
Wink.
And see, that's the stuff that bothers me, because I am an unaffiliated voter. I've figured out how I'm going to vote now, but it actually took me a bit, and I was more open than I was the last 8 years to all parties this time around. Weirdly enough, I'm one of the few people who's become more malleable over the last 8 years in terms of this. And so if Kamala had said, yeah, I was opposed to fracking because I think that climate change is an existential risk and we need to be doing everything that we can to stop it. And I still feel that way. However, I didn't know that much about fracking. And I now look at it as a pretty good bridge technology that was able to actually reduce our carbon footprint early. And so my values haven't changed, but the application of them has changed because I've learned some stuff. And I'll tell you this, I'm open to learning stuff, and I'm surrounding myself by experts that will tell me when I'm wrong, which is different than the other person running in this race who has a group of flat. That I would be very amenable to that. But as it is right now, it sounds to me like, well, yes, I am a super progressive, but I've had to knuckle down to the center. But be aware that if I actually get my mandate, I'll go right back. I would greatly prefer her to go, yeah, you know what, here are my values, and I've learned a bunch of stuff, and not surprisingly, I've modified the application of it because it turns out it's more complicated than I thought it was. And I remain open to talking to people that are smarter than me on specific issues and making sure that I have the best path forward for the American people.
I don't know why she can't figure out a better answer. That, and what would you do different than Joe Biden? I don't know why this is this unanswerable question.
It's couched as a generational thing. Like I did a show yesterday, and I was like, that's a really good question. It's like, what would you do different than Biden? And her answer is, well, I'm not Biden, I'm not Trump. And then I represent a new generation. And they're like, well, that's meaningful to us. And I was like, well, it's not meaningful to me. I don't.
Wait, what does it mean? Geordie LaForge is here? Like what do you mean by a new generation?
Well, the other thing too is like when someone goes like, I represent a new generation. You know what that tells me is I'm getting older. I don't like that as a voter at all. When I hear somebody go, they're going to pass the torch on to me. I'm 40. I'm like, well, I'm 40 and I'm not running for vice president. Oh hell, this is awful, right? So I like, to me that's all horoscope stuff. I've never felt particularly like I'm a millennial, and millennial values. I care about trade policy. I care about civil liberties. I don't care if you're 95 or if you're 18. I'm fairly immaterial there. That one is a weird one. Couldn't she at least just say, I've loved working with Biden, and I think he's been an incredible president, and he is severely underrated, but he will be vindicated by history in the long run. But I will say this: while we agree with each other on most things, we do have different emphases that we're placing, and I think that the emphases I am placing are this, and then lay it all out and go, it's not that Biden disagrees with me, but his attention has been on this thing. I'm less concerned about this thing. I'm more concerned about that. Like, wouldn't that be okay? Like, then you're not throwing the old guy under the bus, but you are indicating that there's going to be a trajectory shift.
I think you got to chuck that old codger under the tires. I mean, like ultimately, I think that's. Well, all roads. I wrote this back in the summer when he was refusing to leave. I was like, look, all roads will eventually lead to the Democratic establishment torching Joe Biden. It's either now or later. That's the only question that you really have is whether or not you are going to. And my suggestion at the time was make the Ukraine corporations famous. Just all of a sudden have the Democrats say, you want to know what? We actually looked at this Biden money moving, all these like offshore accounts. We think he definitely did some. I think Hunter definitely like embezzled a lot of money. You know, we've come around on this. And then Biden will fight about that. You replace him with Kamala. And then at that point, you have at least some daylight to say, well, the one thing that I know is that I don't have biological children. So they will certainly not be trading off my name with foreign entities, throughout the rest of their life. Like, I don't know. There's, if she came out on some level and just said, I was a part of all these conversations with Joe Biden, and I was in the room. We made decisions, but ultimately, hindsight is 2020, and we got the border wrong. We should have done this a different way. We got bad data. We had a result that we were not intending, and so how would things be different? I would put back Remain in Mexico or something. Just take some gigantic thing off the ledger. If you're already going to be running as like, we're serious on the border, we're serious border people. Donald Trump didn't pass the bipartisan border bill that definitely wasn't a sweetener for Ukraine money. It was definitely a standalone border bill. Like, if you're already going to be there, just take the thing away from Donald Trump and say, yeah, I'd put back Remain in Mexico. And I think that Joe, he might do it himself. But if he doesn't do it, then I'll be doing it shortly. Now, Biden would be pissed, and that's what we don't know. We don't know exactly how much Joe Biden has said. If you say one bad word about me, if you say anything other than Joe Biden is the greatest one-term president since Kennedy, then I will go out of my way to tank your campaign. I will say everything negative that I know about you to the press, and I will make sure that you never win. This might just be like a Mexican standoff situation.
Surely he would not be that petty or vindictive. Like, I think he's self-absorbed and unrealistic. I found it really funny.
Do you remember the summer?
Well, I remember him refusing to step down, which would have been the best possible thing he could have done. But him going out of his way to tank a Democratic candidate in order to let Trump win? I don't see him doing that.
We have two fundamentally different ideas of who Joe Biden is. I mean, look, there was no reason for him to run for a second term. And then he eventually even admitted it. Oh, God, I can't wait until we get to relitigate this entire process in the cold light of day and everybody can just admit what did or didn't happen. But he eventually admitted that he's like, yeah, I said I was a one-term president, that I was a bridge president, and then I saw that I had more to do. And it's like, no, you specifically left it vague so you could say that you didn't say it. What is even going on? But I mean, I do think that he's angry that he got pushed off the stage, and I do think that he believes that he does not want his legacy tarnished, and I think he does know that his legacy would be tarnished if she ran away from him.
I think his legacy is going to be tarnished regardless now. Unfortunately for Joe Biden, I think he had a great opportunity to ride off into the sunset on a train to Delaware as a modern-day Cincinnatus who, at the tail end of his career, came out of retirement to defeat Donald Trump and did so and passed the largest environmental spending bill in all of human history, plus several other things, and then having concluded it, said, it is time for me to pass the torch on to a new generation. I think he had that opportunity, and he didn't, and he hung around too long, and now everybody's going to remember his brain melting. That's the bit I remember.
Yeah.
I pay attention to this stuff, but his brain leaked out his goddamned ears on national television, and we all saw it. And it's like, remember how Reagan became Alzheimer's guy, kind of? It was like, oh, he's sort of the Cold War guy, and he's also the Republican messiah, but he's Alzheimer's guy. I think Biden's going to be, unfairly, because it is the last 6 months of his administration, but he's going to be remembered as the dementia guy. He's going to be the Chester A. Arthur's the side shops guy.
Yeah,
like that. He's the dementia guy, I think, and I don't know that there's much he can do about that at this point.
Yeah, the problem is it was the last 6 months of his administration while he was looking and actively interviewing for 4 more years of it. He was
for sure. No.
Yeah.
He made this bet himself. Like whenever at the Democratic convention, when everybody was going, "Thank you, Joe, thank you," and I'm like,
Oh, Joe,
what
we
is
love
this
you, Joe.
bullshit? Thank you, Joe. If he'd stood down 8 months ago to where we could have had a competitive primary, because if Kamala wins, this will be considered a brilliant stroke of we were able to get a popular candidate that won the day, and we were able to bypass a very, very messy knife fight that would have drug out a lot of baggage and given ammunition to the Republicans. We bypassed that brilliantly. We parachuted her in and skipped that initial battle. If she loses, there's going to be this is what you get for having a completely untested candidate who did not get vetted at all beyond about 8 people that were able to make the decision on everybody else. And Biden's the one that forced the hand on that.
Yeah. I think he is, again, I think all roads lead, no matter what, all roads lead to Joe Biden being trashed by the Democratic establishment. I do think the only way that it is good for him is if there is like a blowout, a Democratic blowout. And I don't know how likely that is. But it does bring me to the question that we are asking all of our guests, dear Mr. Heaton, and that is our 4 scenarios that I believe will end this contest. I'm going to read them off to you, and I'm going to ask for you to tell me which one is more likely.
Jill Stein victory, Chase Oliver victory, dead tie where Kamala and Trump agree to be co-presidents together, or everybody forgets to vote. Are these the 4 options?
Yep, a Mike Pence-led polycule. That's the final one. So, rosiest red. This is Pax MAGA, the golden age of conservative populism. It is a Donald Trump big victory. It is a Senate drubbing for the Republicans, not only the seats that they need to take the majority, which are more assured currently by polling, but also some of the fringe ones that they were not expecting at all, like Kari Lake in Arizona. So now they have like a 55, 56 seat advantage there in the Senate. And then, of course, a Republican House. That's the first one. Second one, Democratic Civil War. As you mentioned, a lot of infighting on the Democratic side because the worst possible thing could happen to them. They barely lose the election, so it's another Donald Trump squeaker, but he comes out ahead like he did in 2016. The Republicans do take the Senate, maybe take one of those contested seats in the Rust Belt, so Michigan or Wisconsin, but not the whole slate of them. And then a Democratic House, which means that the Democrats now know our message was good. It was our leadership that sucked. And now there's going to be a 4-year fight to determine what that leadership is going to look like. Meridian line, we're now into the good signs for the Democratic side. So this is unburdened by what has been. Kamala barely wins the Electoral College. The Senate is just an unfavorable map, so the Republicans win that one, but Democrats win the House. And so very, very narrow win. Nobody feels great about it, but they feel awesome that they have beaten Donald Trump 2 out of the 3 times that he has run. And then finally, the best scenario for the Democrats, Roe sends her regards. Reproductive rights win the day. It is a sweep in the Electoral College. All the swing states go to Kamala. A miracle in the Senate. John Tester rallies in Montana. Senator Colin Allred throws Ted Cruz out of power here in Texas. And a Democrat-led House Speaker, Hakeem Jeffries. Pax MAGA, Democratic Civil War, unburdened by what has been, or Roe sends her regards. Which does Andrew Heaton find to be the most likely?
I think it's either going to be Pax MAGA or unburdened by what has been. I go back and forth on this.
Wow, so Pax MAGA is the rosiest.
Oh,
so
no,
the sweet.
Excuse me. What's
Democratic Civil War or unburdened by what has been?
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way. I think it's going to be a squeaker everywhere. The only thing that I'm fairly confident on is I do think the Republicans will take the Senate. I think that just the map looks very favorable to them. I don't see the Democrats doing that. I think the Democrats will probably take the House, but it'll be by like 2 votes. Excuse me, by two seats. So it'll be an incredibly squeaky house, and I think I was willing to bet $10 that Kamala will beat Trump. I am now, and by the way, I have $1,000 bet with this guy named Rudyard that you met the other day.
Yep.
That there will be over 1,000 people killed in political violence, and I bet him $1,000. No, there will be less than 1,000 deaths of political violence. I'm betting $1,000 we will not have anything resembling a civil war in the United States. So I'm willing to bet up to $1,000 on stuff so people know like my level of certitude. I have certitude up to $1,000. I was willing to bet $10 that Kamala would defeat Donald Trump. The logic being that I think this election will ultimately boil down to about 70,000 votes in 5 to 7 swing states, some of whom are actively wondering if J.D. Vance ever had sex with a couch, and where they will basically come down to these undecided voters will go, I don't know, Black Disney Mom seems nice. Let's try something new. I think let's try something new will probably carry the day.
Even though she's in the administration, she will be looked at as new.
We're not, but these 70,000 voters who are undecideds in these 7 states are not thinking that way. They're not going, well,
they don't even know that we have a president. They're just going to go. I think that there is a sizable group of undecided voters who just vote for the other party every 4 to 8 years under the theory that we might as well try something new. I think that there's a decent amount of. But wait, so you're saying that they're going to vote for the same party?
Yes, and I don't think that
even though they normally vote for the opposite party.
I am not claiming that these people are particularly logically coherent. I'm just telling you, I think that between Biden and Trump, that was a different equation, and they were looking at the 2 standard bearers of the last 8 years. Now one of those standard bearers has been replaced, and they view her as something new. So I think that being said, though, I'm taking my bet down from $10 to $5. I am no longer I am $5 confident Kamala Harris is going to win. I would not be very surprised if Trump won. Also, it's funny, Justin, what has changed is in Texas, where we have a lot of friends, many of whom are not for Donald Trump. I know quite a few.
We have lived in places where Democrats are aplenty in Texas. Yes.
But in my little Austin cohort, there is widespread belief that Trump's going to win, whether they like it or not. I find that people in Austin are like, yeah, Trump's probably going to take it. And I'm already talking to people in D.C. who are like, this is going to be Kamala for sure. If you just have to put up a non-Trump and they'll win, and Kamala's not Trump and she's going to win. And I'm beginning to go, but this is what we said in 2016. Does anybody remember that film?
Does anyone remember?
Does anybody remember that?
One? Yeah.
So I don't know. In 2016, Justin, I bought stock in Smith & Wesson because I was so confident that Hillary Clinton would win. I thought all the Republicans would flip their shit, and I could spend that and make. I think I spent like $200 in Smith & Wesson stock, and I thought I could make $20 off of it. That's how confident I was back then. I am now $5 confident. So that is to say, this is a coin flip, and I'm marginally thinking Kamala.
Some people look at polls. Some people take a look at the betting markets, but you, dear listener, can follow the Chicken Heaton Bet Index that says Trump has gained $5 since Heaton felt good enough to put $10 on Kamala. Now it is receded to only $5. Will he take the money off the table by the time that election day rolls around? We'll have to keep an eye on Heaton for that. Yeah, it's funny. On the show that we do together with Jen Briney, We're Not Wrong, I had to miss the show because my daughter was born, and I was listening to it in the hospital after it was posted. And it was right after you guys had come back from the DNC. And both you and Jen were like, yeah, no, definitely Kamala. Kamala's got it. Kamala's got it in the bag. I think it's going to be Kamala. And I'm like, that's the moment that I'm supposed to be on the show for. All due respect to our friend Will, who edits the show and was hosting in pinch hitter duty. But I would have made fun of you guys relentlessly for coming back from the Kamala festival and saying, I don't know, I think there's something to this Kamala lady.
For sure. Well, I mean, the euphoria was palpable at the Democratic National Convention, but I think what you and what Jeff Maurer and other people that are more canny than myself pointed out was the Democrats were just euphoric that they had a shot, and that
Yes.
they weren't running a weekend at Bernie's candidate. That was the euphoria. The actual honeymoon, and maybe if it had been like 6 weeks before the election, maybe the euphoria would have stuck around, but it does seem to have dropped off a little bit. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I should check.
Well,
You know what?
does
I
anybody.
usually I do pay a lot of attention normally to electionbettingodds.com, run by my friend Maxim and Maxim Lott, and I should go check that out because I find that tends to be more realistic than the polls, and maybe I should bet $5.
Well, you know, that's we're in kind of this golden market for these prediction markets, right? Of people putting money on. Right now, I can tell you that electionbettingodds.com has Donald Trump at a 61.4% chance to win, Kamala Harris at a 38.1% chance to win. That does seem to follow some of the other markets like Polymarket and Kalshi that have gotten a lot of attention, where people can actually put like for real money. Like you have people that are putting like $500,000, $250,000 on these races, which is crazy because a lot of people are saying, I want to get somebody from these betting markets on, because what you're hearing now is like, oh yeah, a bunch of Trump whales are like moving the betting markets. And it's like, yeah, but that's how it works. If people believe that they can bet $1 million on somebody, it means that they're really sure that they're going to win. Whether or not they're dumb is a different story. It actually creates the opportunity for somebody else to buy in lower and make more money on the back of these dullards. It doesn't seem to be the case, at least right now.
I'd be happy to put you in touch with Maxim, who's a great guy and a really, really smart dude. And he can talk about this, but I'll just say intuitively, outside of the math, I think in all political stuff, the number one thing to pay attention to is people's pocketbook. That's it. That's the end of the day. How much money are you fronting for this? So when you ask people, you know, who's going to win the Democratic primary back in like 2016? Bernie Sanders for sure. Do you want to bet $20 on that? No, I don't. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, the former was a statement of what I want reality to be. When you put money on it, then people become much more accurate in terms of what they actually think will happen, which is why I think those odds work well. Or I will add to that, like, when people tell you what they really care about I really care about this in politics. It's really super important to me. That's great. Like, what charities do you donate money to? Do you donate money to that charity that would palliatively deal with that specific thing you say is your highest priority in life? No. Do you have more than 3 streaming services? Yes. You don't really care. I'm sorry. You don't really. If you got 3 streaming services, you don't donate to charity, you don't care. You don't care if you got 3 streaming services.
There's a conservative influencer who, you know, can get a little wild, but I do think that he's made a good point recently. Mike Cernovich on Twitter. And he has pointed out that, like, if somebody starts getting in his mentions and screaming, if he has some opinion that people don't like, and he mostly talks within the Republican echo chamber, if somebody's like, oh, well, you're for this thing and you should not be this thing, his number one, because mostly he's been talking about how the Republicans are smart to pivot away from evangelical pro-life positions because they need to win the election. And so you have a bunch of pro-life people that are like, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, have you knocked on doors? How many people did you register this cycle? Did you go out and do it? Because if you didn't, then you're getting a lot of your yayas out yelling at random people inside your own tent on Twitter, when you could be taking that energy and actually affecting the change that you are yelling and screaming about, especially if you are talking in apocalyptic terms that this needs to or that needs to happen.
Yeah. Twitter's cheap. And I think it was like 2017 or 2018. I did a thing where I donated $1 to charity for every political tweet I made. And it, one, limited the amount of political shit I said. Which I think made me actually a far better person. And 2, by the end of it, I'm not that political on Twitter anyway. By the end of it, I was like, you know, if everybody would just do this, if everybody would just donate $1 for every political tweet they make, we would fix every problem in America. Every problem in America would go away if you just $1 for every political tweet. But people won't do it because, again, I say this at the end of the day, most people don't care. They're signaling and they're posturing. They don't actually give a shit. Put your money where your mouth is if you care about things.
So let me ask you this then, because you said that you believe in the prediction markets. You believe in people putting their money where their mouth is. The Heaton Chicken Shed Index is at $5 for Kamala right now. When I tell you that Polymarket, Betfair, Kalshi, Predicted, and Smarkets, these are American and UK and worldwide betting markets, they all have Donald Trump not only above 50%, as in leading, but 4 out of the 5 have him above 60%. Kamala does not break 30s, does not break the 30s in any of these markets right now. Does that sway you anymore? Are you now $2.50 on Kamala?
Oh my God. I just did it in my head. I just went, all right, Heaton, if you had to bet $30, who would you bet on? And I went, probably Trump.
Oh my God, that's a huge swing. A $35
Well,
swing.
if I no, that's if I had to. If I had to.
Yes.
I'm down to like $1. I think I'm down to $1 on this. It's gonna be tight, man. I think it's gonna be super tight.
I believe so too.
Yeah. Hey, my laptop is about to die.
Okay. Heaton,
so
he is a political orphanage. We're not wrong. We love him. We will follow him forever. See you later, buddy.
Pleasure to be back. Bye.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics brought to you by me and you and everybody. But I wrote it and I recorded it. And it's for Dog and Pony Show Audio. And Dog and Pony Show Audio is based here in Austin, Texas. A big thank you to Bill Scher. Go ahead and subscribe to Washington Monthly. That's also on Substack. And Andrew Heaton, The Political Orphanage. And also, I don't think we got a chance to plug his book, but his book is called Tribalism is Stupid. Is it Tribalism is Stupid or Tribalism is Dumb? It's Tribalism is Dumb, where it came from, how it got so bad, and what to do about it. That some bitch is 5 stars here on Amazon. And everybody I know who has read it has loved it. You just heard Heaton talk. He's a hilarious guy. He's got great insights. So please go support the boy. Support the boy. Buy his book. Tribalism is Dumb. Where it came from, how it got so bad, and what to do about it. Available on audiobook. Available in regular book. It's a good time. It's a really, really, really good time. If you like to support us on social media, it is Justin R. Young on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Our YouTube is Politics. Shout out to all of our YouTube community, by the way. Thank you. Thank you for our YouTube community. We continue to grow there. Having a great time with these video podcasts. I just got to say, I don't know. I'm too pretty to be audio only anyway. Also, if you want to support us with a one-time donation, only a few places to do it. PayPal.me/payjury. That is PAYJURY. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash. And you can hit me up with anything you'd like at the post office box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. Again, that is post office box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. But the only place that you can get our bonus content is at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Our $3 club, now $12 a month. Capped. Never going to be a $15 a month again. That some folks might have seen because of the way that we did things back at the old place. Now we're in the beautiful, simplified, sleek world of Substack. It is $12 a month. You get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Do it now. Do it now. If you do it now, you will have a good time. This is when the episodes are awesome. Come on. But of course, if you want to get on our Titanic founding tier, you get your name read on the show. And guys, the new version of this, before you used to be able to do it monthly. Now, the people that are supporting us at the founding tier, they're paying for the whole year up front. And I got to say, I'm looking at this sheet. It's almost just as long as it was back at the other place. You got to love it. Here are their names. Meemaw to the Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Jeremy, Charles. Oh, wait, no. Charles is pro-idiot. That's it. Pro-idiot. Oh, yeah, it's Adam. Chiller Tomatoes, Just Another Pilot, David, ABE Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Will, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Matt Matthew, the Borge B, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Phil, Andrew, Devon, Edison, Paul, Jerry, Gloria Young, my mom, a dog named Checkers, Berkeley, Stephen, John, and Ryan. If you want your name read on this, well, you head on over to TakePoliticsSeriously.com. You hit that subscribe button, and you get in at the Titanic founding tier, formerly the $10 club. And that's it for us this week. We got a great guest for you next week. I don't think a lot of you guys are going to be able to guess it, but it's a really fun name, and Substack hooked it up for us. So we're excited. We got some more Substack people coming on over the next 2 weeks, but this is it. Don't get scared now. We're in the end game. And I am jacked because some shows, they talk about politics. Others, they're talking about politics, and still more, man, they're discussing politics. But this is the only show that dares discuss. Oh, 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.